What's up, everyone? Welcome to Lowered Expectations. Thanks for lowering your expectations and hanging out with me here. I do appreciate it. Today's video is part 2 of working on a 2016 Kia Sorento. In part 1, I replaced the sway bar end links and removed the valve cover so that we can replace the gasket. In this video, I am going to be replacing the gasket, reinstalling the valve cover in a step-by-step sort of way, and then taking it out for a test drive. I have never done this job before on this particular vehicle, and so I did do a few things wrong, and I tried to point that out in this video so that you guys can do it right the first time instead of making the mistakes that I made. All in all, this hasn't been too bad so far. Let's hope that I have the right gasket and we can get this back together and sort it out. It does in fact look like it is the right one, and it's going to fit. We don't have the gasket that goes on around the fuel pump. There's a separate gasket right here, so I'm actually going to inspect this, clean it up really good, and then put a little bit of glue on it when I put it back together, but it doesn't look like it was leaking around here whatsoever. I just peeled the old gasket off, and it was quite brittle. A lot of it actually broke up into pieces. Not very impressive for a vehicle that was only made in 2016. This gasket should not pull apart like that. We're going to replace it, and hopefully it doesn't leak for another few years. It appears as though the main place that this one was leaking was in through this area. The reason why I know that is because when I was pulling the gasket off, it was actually stuck down quite well to the aluminum all the way around except for right here. I'm just about to clean the valve cover off. For the valve cover, I am going to spray a little bit of brake clean because I've got to get down into these grooves. Because I didn't get a new gasket for around the fuel pump, I'm going to put a little bit of glue on it. This still does feel very pliable. It must not get as hot as the rest of the valve cover gasket, but I am going to put a little bit of glue on this just to try to give us a little extra security that this doesn't leak. The next person to work on this is probably going to hate me because this glue bonds really well and the valve cover is probably not going to want to come off. Now for the gasket that goes around here, we are going to put a little dab of glue out here in this corner. I'm not sure if it needs it at all, but it won't hurt, I can tell you that. So a little dab in that corner. And a little dab over here. Instead of spraying brake clean into the engine, I will simply put some brake clean on a rag and wipe around this area. The local auto parts store wanted a $110 plus $35 shipping because they didn't have one local, and I got this one for, I believe, $27 on Amazon. I was somewhat concerned about whether or not it would seal up, but I'm not worried about that anymore. This is a very nice squishy gasket. Let's see if we can squeeze this in between that bracket now. This is going to be the trickiest part back here. And boom, just like that, we are in. Wow, that went really well. I got to check to make sure that the gasket is still seated. It does appear to be. Okay. That went really well. All right, I'm going to finish tightening all of these by hand because I don't want to break a bolt, but I want to make sure that they are squishing the gasket and fully tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So there are in fact 18 of those bolts. I'm going to see if I can get a camera shot of this just to show you guys how tight it really is. So this is where the fuel line goes on. That little threaded part down there. Let's see, is it focusing? There we go. So I can't get my hand down in there with the camera in the way, so I need to stop recording. Without the camera in the way, it's actually fairly easy, he said as he struggled to get the nut. Okay, fuel line is seated in place, and then spin the nut on. I think it started. It in fact did start. So I'm actually going to mount the fuel pump with the nut on loose, just to make sure that this fuel line is tightened on the right way. I suppose I can tighten that, and if I need to move the fuel pump, then I'll move the fuel pump. That makes sense, doesn't it? And if I don't need to, then it's good to go. So that nut is on, and now I can tighten up the lower nut. It is quite difficult to get to, but I can get to it with just a normal 19mm wrench. And that is tightened. I'm now going to install this bracket over here, because the only reason why I removed this is to give myself some clearance for the valve cover to come off. It's back on, so we can put that back on. Because I'm here, I'm going to pop this vent back onto the valve cover. Get my needle nose pliers and put the clamp back on as well. Before I forget, I'm actually going to tighten this line up just in case that's on there permanently now. And then we will move on to putting this bracket back on the side of the engine. And yeah, there's the bracket and then the piece that goes on the bracket. The camera will not be able to see this. So yeah, I'm just going to have to get in there, and I'm going to have to move the camera. These metal hoses have a bracket on them that bolts onto the side of the engine, and then another bracket bolts to that bracket. So I've got this 10mm bolt, 10mm head, 6mm bolt that goes in there, and somehow miraculously it had already lined itself up. I didn't even have to line it up. If you're not so lucky, it might be a bit of a struggle to get it to line back up. There we go. That is back on. Okay, I don't know if this angle's any better, but there is a bracket right here with a 6mm bolt that holds that bracket to the side of the intake manifold. Okay, now I think what I need to do next is install the inlet pipe. So I'll grab that. This is Future Joel. I am much wiser now, and I am here to tell you that you should absolutely not install the charge pipe until you have the bracket for the high pressure fuel line installed. Guess how I found that out? I have got one bolt left, one single bolt remaining, and obviously I know where this goes because I'm a super awesome mechanic. It holds on the high pressure fuel line with this bracket. Only a complete idiot would not know where that goes. All right, there we go. Took a few extra steps to get there, but we got it. All right, I have wiggled that hose back into place. Now, before we go any further, I am going to reattach this vacuum hose before I forget. and this connector as well. So this hose snaps into the intake manifold and pushes into the back of this, whatever this is, solenoid, some sort of valve. Oh, it's some sort of boost control, bypass or blow off. The wire clicks on here, this connector clicks on there rather. All right, I've got that hose clamp back on. That was way more silly than it should have been, but they used those stupid hose clamps, and so yeah, it was a little bit miserable. There we go. Before I tighten these up, I'm going to put the bolt in that holds this pipe in place, just to make sure that it's all oriented the way it's supposed to be. All right, while we're here, and because it's easy, let's put this breather hose back on. It'd be nice if they didn't use these silly security hose clamps, but they do, so we're gonna work around it with some channel locks. There we go. That is secured in place. It's not going anywhere. Oh, hey, buddy. Quasar came to visit us. Okay, what are we gonna put on here next? I guess the ground bolt can go on. We'll clean that up a little bit before we put it on. I'm pretty sure I removed this after I had the hose out of the way, or nah, I probably just wiggled my socket in there, but I'm going to use a wrench to tighten it. Okay, I think I will put the coil packs in place now and get rid of some bolts and pieces. 3 and the last one. The connectors are all sitting in place exactly where they should be, so I'm going to slide them on and engage the locks. Quite extraordinarily easy, very nice. And also the plug for the high pressure fuel injector. Now we can bolt down, there's 3 bolts in this guy here, and we don't have much left to go. The internet tells me to connect the positive terminal first and then the negative. I don't know why, but I'm going to listen to it. Tighten that up with a ratchet. One final step to completing this repair, and that is putting the cover back on. So let's get that done. Let's see, that lines up right there, which means there we go. Gonna go for a quick drive around the block and make sure everything's okay, or check to see if everything's okay. I suspect that it will be. Listen for noises in the suspension, as well as any smoke from the engine. I like this vehicle. I know a lot of people hate on Kia and Hyundai, but I think this is a really nice vehicle. The other day when I removed the sway bar end link to see if it was actually bad, I put a few miles on it and I ranted to Megan for probably 15 minutes about how nice of a vehicle I thought it was. Now her family are all making fun of me. But yeah, great little vehicle. It's not really a little vehicle either, it's fairly substantial. It's quiet inside, there's not a lot of rattles, it feels really well made. It handles fairly decent for an SUV. I mean, it's not a race car, but 2-liter turbo, but there's not a huge amount of lag. It works, yeah, the transmission is seamless. Very nice shifting. Not actually sure what kind of transmission it has. It might have a CVT with fake shifts, which would explain how smooth it shifts, but I'm not sure. Did I say I like it? It does make a bit of fuss when you really step on it, but that's to be expected from a 2-liter. Wow, gets up to speed in a hurry. It's got no shortage of power, that's for sure. Construction, because of course there's construction. Handles predictably. I really like it. I like the way it shifts. I like the way it drives. We made it back. Alright, let's check under the hood to see if we have any leaks or funny smells. There's some oil on that bracket. I should brake clean that off before it goes. Pull this cover off. Take a look. No smell of fuel, no smell of oil. These are all of the tools that I used for this project. For the sway bar end links, I used a lead hammer, a 22mm socket, a 3/4 extension and ratchet, this breaker bar to loosen off the wheel nuts, a 3/8 ratchet with a 8mm socket, a 17mm wrench, the electric impact, and that is everything that I used for changing the sway bar end links. For changing the valve cover gasket, I used mostly my 20-volt DeWalt impact driver with a 1/4-inch drive and 1/4-inch sockets. I used my channel lock pliers, a 12mm deep socket, although I don't think it needed to be deep, a 10mm deep socket, a 10mm shallow, a 1/4-inch extension, a 1/4-inch ratchet, 10mm wrench, needle nose pliers, 19mm wrench, and a little pry bar. There you have it, folks. That job is done and out of the way. Now I can carry on with some of my other projects. This actually went fairly well. There were a few steps that I missed. Hopefully I pointed it out clearly enough in my part 1 and part 2 so that you guys get it right the first time and don't make my mistakes. I have been testing a welder and working on a trailer project, and Weaver has actually sent me a second welder with a plastic welding feature, plastic stitching feature. Anyway, I'll be making a video on that in the future, as well as probably doing some more ultrasonic cleaner videos. I am currently doing some vacuum infusion, building a jet ski part. I'm hoping to have a video out on that soon. It was supposed to be released probably at the same day this one was, but I got behind because I've been very busy with work. This is the Weaver vacuum pump that I've been using for the vacuum infusion. I've actually had it for a couple of years now, and it works really well. Anyway, that is going to do it for this one. If you guys liked the video, please remember to leave a thumbs up, and if you want to see more nonsense, be sure to subscribe. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.